The morning sun rose over New Eden exactly as it had for the past 50 years. Golden light spread across endless wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. In the central settlement of Hope's Landing, children played in the streets while their parents prepared for the anniversary celebration. Banners hung between buildings, showing Earth's blue marble alongside New Eden's twin moons. Sarah Chen stood on her apartment balcony, watching her daughter Maya help set up tables in the town square. The girl was 19 now, studying agricultural engineering at the Colony University. Sarah smiled, remembering when Maya was just a baby, making this journey from Earth in cryosleep. Now Maya was talking about staying here permanently, about building a life among the golden fields. Sarah's communicator buzzed, military frequency. Her smile faded as she answered. Admiral Chen? The voice was tight with tension. We have unknown ships entering the system. Multiple contacts. They're not responding to hails. Sarah's heart dropped. She was supposed to be on leave, attending the celebration with Maya, but she was still an admiral in Earth's colonial defense fleet. How many ships? 63 and counting, ma'am. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Sarah ran inside, grabbing her uniform jacket. Sound the alert. Get every available ship in the air. I'm heading to the command center. Admiral, they're already moving fast. They'll be in weapons range in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Sarah looked out the window at Maya, laughing with her friends, hanging decorations for a party that would never happen. Evacuate the settlements, Sarah ordered. All of them, now! She ran down the stairs, pushing through crowds of confused colonists as warning sirens began to wail. The celebration banners flapped in the wind like flags of surrender. Maya saw her mother running and called out, Mom? What's happening? Sarah grabbed her daughter's hand. We need to get to the shelters. Right now. But forget the party. Sarah pulled Maya toward the nearest emergency shelter, a reinforced bunker beneath the town hall. All around them, people were starting to panic as the sirens grew louder. Above them, the sky began to change. Bright streaks of light appeared, growing larger. Ships. Huge ships, their hulls black and covered in strange geometric patterns. The first explosion hit the spaceport on the eastern edge of Hope's Landing. A massive fireball rose into the sky and the shockwave knocked people off their feet. Sarah and Maya tumbled to the ground. When Sarah looked up, she saw the ships hovering above the city like metal mountains. Get to the shelter, Sarah screamed at the crowds. She picked Maya up and ran, her military training taking over. Behind them, more explosions tore through the settlement. Buildings that had stood for 50 years vanished in flames. They made it to the shelter entrance. Hundreds of people were trying to push inside at once. Sarah used her authority to force a path through. I'm Admiral Chen. Let us through. Women and children first. Someone grabbed Sarah's arm. It was Marcus Torres, a Marine captain she knew from the defense garrison. His face was covered in dust and blood. Admiral, he gasped. My family is in the northern settlements. I can't reach them on comms. Sarah's blood ran cold. The northern settlements. Where the farms were. Where most of the children lived. Another explosion rocked the ground. This one was closer. The shelter entrance began to collapse. Sarah pushed Maya inside, then turned to help others. Mom, Maya screamed, reaching back. Stay there, Sarah ordered. I'll be right behind you. She helped an elderly man through the entrance. Then a woman carrying a baby. Marcus was beside her, pulling people to safety. Above them, the alien ships began their systematic destruction. Energy beams cut through buildings like knives through paper. Sarah saw one of the beams coming toward them. Time seemed to slow down. She looked at Maya's face in the shelter entrance, her daughter's eyes wide with terror. I love you, Sarah whispered. Then Marcus tackled her, throwing them both into the shelter as the entrance collapsed behind them. Rock and metal crashed down, sealing them inside but saving their lives. In the darkness of the shelter, emergency lights flickered on. 200 people were crammed into a space meant for 100. Children cried. Adults tried to contact the outside world, but all communications were dead. Sarah pulled out her military communicator, using the emergency frequency. Static. Then a voice, broken and desperate. This is Northern Settlement Delta, under attack. They're killing everyone. Please. God, please, the voice cut off. Sarah tried other frequencies. More voices, more screams, more silence. Settlement after settlement went dark. Marcus was trying his own communicator, calling his wife and 2 sons. Maria? Miguel, Danny? Please answer. Please. Only static replied. Above them they could hear the bombardment continuing. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. A child asked their mother when they could go home. The mother had no answer. Hours passed. The bombardment didn't stop. Sarah tried to count the explosions but lost track after 300. How much ammunition did these aliens have? Why were they doing this? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sounds of destruction faded. The alien ships were leaving. Sarah waited another hour before ordering the shelter doors opened. The manual override took 6 men to operate. When the doors finally cracked open, smoke poured in. The world outside was unrecognizable. Hope's Landing was gone. Where buildings had stood, there were only craters and burning rubble. The sky was black with smoke. Bodies lay in the streets, some burned beyond recognition. Maya stumbled out beside her mother and vomited. Sarah held her daughter's hair back, her own eyes dry. She couldn't cry, not yet. There was too much to do. Survivors, Sarah called out. Anyone who can hear me, call out. A few voices answered from nearby ruins. Sarah organized rescue teams. Marcus led groups into the destruction, searching for anyone still alive. They found a few. A man trapped under rubble, both legs crushed. A woman protecting her baby in a bathtub, both somehow untouched. A teenager who had hidden in a water tank, but mostly they found bodies. Sarah's communicator crackled. A signal from orbit. One of the defense fleet ships had survived, barely. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez on the Valiant. We took heavy damage. Most of the fleet is gone. The enemy has left the system. What about the other settlements? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. A long pause. Gone, ma'am. All 12 major settlements. The mining stations. The orbital platforms, everything, we estimate 8.7 million casualties, colony-wide. Sarah felt her legs give out. She sat down hard on a piece of rubble. 8.7 million people. The entire colony population. Her home for 20 years. Maya's entire life. Wait, Captain Rodriguez said. We're receiving a transmission. It's from the alien fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies. Sarah listened as the alien voice came through, translated by the ship's computer. The words were simple and cold. Humanity encroaches. This is your warning. Leave the border regions or face extinction. Your expansion ends here. Then silence. Sarah looked around at the destruction. This was a warning? This massacre of millions? She thought of all the families who would never come home. All the children who died in their beds. All the dreams that turned to ash. Marcus approached her, his face streaked with tears. Admiral, I found them. My family. They're gone. All of them. Sarah stood and put a hand on his shoulder. She had no words of comfort. What could she say? That it would be okay? It wouldn't. Nothing would ever be okay again. Maya came running from a ruined building. Mom, Dr. Okonkwo is alive. She's hurt but alive. Sarah followed her daughter to where several survivors were helping a woman from the wreckage. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the colony's chief xenobiologist. Her leg was broken and her face was cut. But her eyes were sharp and clear. Admiral, Amara said, I need you to listen. I know who did this. The Korth Ascendancy. I've studied them. I warned Earth about their territorial nature. I told them we were expanding too fast into their border regions. You knew this could happen? Sarah's voice was dangerous. I knew they might respond to what they saw as invasion, Amara said. But I never thought, not like this. This is genocide. Sarah looked at the burning ruins around them. They call this a warning. Then God help us when they actually attack, Marcus muttered. Over the next 3 days, the survivors worked to recover bodies and send messages to Earth. The faster-than-light communication array was destroyed, so they had to repair one of the damaged ships enough to send a drone back to Earth with recordings. Sarah made sure those recordings included everything. The destruction, the bodies, the final messages from people as they died. She included the video of a mother shielding her children as fire consumed them. She included the audio of the northern settlements being bombarded, the screams of thousands. Earth needed to see what the Korth had done. Every human being in the solar system needed to know. The drone launched on the 4th day. It would take 2 weeks to reach Earth. Sarah stood with Maya and Marcus at the mass grave they dug on the outskirts of what used to be Hope's Landing. Thousands of bodies lay there. wrapped in whatever cloth they could find. There weren't enough survivors to bury everyone properly. Many would never be found, vaporized by the bombardment. I don't understand, Maya said quietly. Why did they do this? We never hurt them. Sarah had no answer. She just held her daughter close and stared at the grave. Marcus knelt at the edge, placing a photo of his family on the ground. His wife smiling, his boys laughing. All gone now, all dust. They'll pay, Marcus said. I don't know how or when, but they'll pay for this. Sarah thought about Earth, about humanity's industrial might, about the weapons she knew existed in secret military labs, about what humans did when they were pushed too far. Yes, she agreed. They will. 2 weeks later, the emergency session of Earth's Unified Congress met. Every delegate watched the recordings from New Eden. They saw the bodies, heard the screams, listened to the Korth's cold message. When the vote came for a declaration of total war, not a single delegate voted against it. The message went out to all human colonies, all ships, all stations. Humanity was going to war. Not for territory, not for resources, for vengeance, for the 8.7 million people who died screaming on New Eden and the other colonies. Admiral Sarah Chen received her orders via quantum communication. She was being recalled to Earth to take command of the largest military fleet ever assembled. Operation Hellfire, they called it. As Sarah prepared to leave New Eden for the last time, she stood at the mass grave with Maya. I have to go, Sarah said. I have to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. Make them pay, Mom, for everyone we lost. Make them hurt like we hurt. Sarah embraced her daughter, then walked to the shuttle that would take her to the orbital platform where the Valiant waited. As the shuttle lifted off, she looked down at the scarred surface of New Eden. The golden wheat fields were burned black. The settlements were craters. The rivers ran with ash. A world of hope had become a world of graves. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. The Korth Ascendancy wanted to warn humanity about encroachment. They were about to learn what humanity did when you killed their children. They were about to learn that humans didn't just get mad. They got even. And the galaxy would burn before humanity's rage was satisfied. Sarah Chen arrived at Earth 6 months after the massacre. The blue planet looked peaceful from orbit, but she could see the changes even from space. Dozens of new shipyards orbited the Moon and Mars. Construction platforms stretched across the asteroid belt. Every factory, every foundry, every construction facility had been converted to war production. Humanity was building an army. The shuttle brought her down to Geneva, where the military command center had been expanded into a massive complex. As she walked through the corridors, she saw the determination on every face. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, all working with focused intensity. The mood was cold and purposeful. Admiral James Walker met her in the command center. He was an old friend, but his eyes were hard now. Sarah, he said, I'm sorry about New Eden, about Maya having to see that. Maya's alive, Sarah said flatly. 8.7 million others aren't. Walker nodded. Come with me. There's something you need to see. He led her deep into the complex through security checkpoints that scanned her DNA, her retinas, her brain patterns. Finally, they reached a room labeled simply, Project Hellfire. Inside, holographic displays showed weapon designs. Sarah's breath caught as she recognized what she was seeing. These are relativistic kinetic bombardment systems, she said. We banned these after the Mars colony wars. We banned using them on humans, Walker corrected. We never stopped researching them, or improving them. He pulled up another display, quantum singularity torpedoes. They create a micro black hole that lasts 3 seconds, enough to tear apart a ship from the inside. Another display, stellar detonation devices. We can destabilize a star's fusion reaction, turn it into a supernova. Sarah stared at the weapons. These are genocide weapons. Yes, Walker said simply. The Korth committed genocide. We're going to respond in kind. But the civilian casualties will be measured in billions, Walker finished. The Korth Ascendancy has 43 colony worlds and a homeworld population of 7 billion. We're going to make them extinct, Sarah. Every last one of them. Sarah thought of Maya's face, of the mass graves, of the children's screams in the recordings. Show me more, she said. Walker smiled grimly. There's more. Much more. Dr. Patel, bring up the biological warfare projects. A scientist appeared on the holographic display. Admiral Chen, we've spent the last 6 months studying every piece of Korth biology we could find. Dead bodies from their raids on border stations. Genetic samples from old first contact missions. We've designed 17 different pathogens specifically tailored to their DNA. These diseases, the scientist continued, are incredibly lethal to Korth but harmless to humans. Mortality rate over 98%. Incubation period of 3 days, meaning infected Korth will spread it before they show symptoms. Sarah felt sick. Then she remembered the bodies on New Eden and pushed the feeling down. What else? We've mobilized every ship we can, Walker said. Every cargo hauler, passenger liner, and mining vessel has been retrofitted with weapons. We've pulled every reserve soldier out of retirement. We're training 1 million new Marines, and we've designed something special for the ground assault forces. He pulled up an image of powered armor, but this wasn't like the old suits. This was sleek, black, covered in weapons. The Reaper Mark IV combat suit, Walker explained. Stronger than anything we've built before. Each Marine wearing one of these can fight like 10 soldiers. We're giving them to Captain Torres and his unit first. Torres? Sarah asked. The Marine from New Eden? He volunteered to lead the first assault units, Walker said. His whole family died in the northern settlements. He wants revenge more than anyone. Sarah understood that feeling. What's my role in all this? Walker brought up a star map. It showed human space and the Korth Ascendancy's territory. You're going to lead Operation Hellfire. 2,000 ships. 3 million soldiers. The largest military force humanity has ever assembled. Your mission is simple. Destroy the Korth Ascendancy completely. No mercy, no prisoners. No survivors. Well, when do we launch? Sarah asked. 3 months? We're still building ships. Still training troops. But soon, Sarah. Soon we're going to make them pay. Sarah spent the next 3 months preparing. She met with her ship captains, her Marine commanders, her logistics officers. Every day brought news of more ships completed, more weapons tested, more soldiers ready. She also met with Captain Marcus Torres. He stood in her office wearing the new Reaper armor, looking like death itself. Admiral, he saluted. The Reapers are ready. 100 of the best Marines humanity has. We've been training with the new suits, learning the Korth language, studying their tactics. We won't let you down. Your mission will be the hardest, Sarah said. You'll be going in first, hitting their military installations before the main fleet arrives. High risk. Good, Marcus said. His voice was cold. I want to look them in the eyes when I kill them. I want them to know why they're dying. Sarah saw the rage burning in him. She recognized it because she felt it too. Marcus, when this is over, they'll be extinct, Marcus interrupted. That's all that matters. The day of launch arrived. Sarah stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. Around her floated 2,000 warships, the largest fleet in human history. Enough firepower to crack planets. She opened a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Chen. 6 months ago, the Korth Ascendancy murdered 8.7 million of our people. Men, women, and children. They burned our colonies and called it a warning. Today we show them what humanity does when you kill our children. Today we bring them retribution. All ships engage faster than light drives. Target Threshold Gate, the Korth border defense system. The fleet vanished from Earth orbit in a flash of distorted space. They emerged 3 days later at Threshold Gate. The Korth had built a massive space station here, protected by 200 warships. It was supposed to be impregnable. The Korth fleet reacted immediately, launching fighters and powering up their weapons. But they weren't ready for what humanity brought. Sarah watched the tactical display as her ships moved into position. All vessels, fire at will. The space around Threshold Gate lit up with weapons fire. Human railguns launched projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Missiles with quantum warheads streaked toward Korth ships. Energy beams powerful enough to cut through steel like butter lanced across the void. The Korth fought back. Their weapons were advanced, their shields strong. They destroyed 12 human ships in the first minute. But humanity had brought overwhelming force. For every human ship destroyed, 10 Korth ships died. The relativistic kinetic bombardment systems proved devastating. Chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed punched through Korth shields like they didn't exist. Within an hour, the Korth fleet was shattered. Debris floated where proud warships had been. The space station tried to surrender. Denied, Sarah said coldly. Fire the quantum singularity torpedo. The weapon launched. When it hit the station, reality itself seemed to tear. A black hole appeared in the station's center for exactly 3 seconds. In that time, it pulled the entire structure into itself. compressing steel and flesh into a point smaller than an atom. Then the black hole evaporated in a flash of radiation. 10,000 Korth were on that station. Now there was nothing left but scattered atoms. All ships proceed to the next target, Sarah ordered. We don't stop until every Korth military installation in this sector is destroyed. Over the next week, humanity's fleet carved through Korth-bordered defenses. Every military outpost was destroyed. Every warship was hunted down. The Korth tried to regroup, tried to mount a defense, but they were overwhelmed. Marcus Torres and the Reapers led boarding actions on Korth supply bases. They moved through the corridors in their black armor like shadows of death. The Korth soldiers they encountered died quickly. Some tried to surrender. The Reapers killed them anyway. No mercy, Marcus said after one battle, standing over a pile of Korth bodies. They didn't show mercy to my boys. They don't get any from us. His team said nothing. They just reloaded their weapons and moved to the next target. After 2 weeks, the border regions were secure. Sarah sent a message back to Earth. Phase 1 complete. Threshold Gate and surrounding defenses destroyed. Korth Ascendancy military presence in border sectors eliminated. Moving to Phase 2. Deep strike operations. Earth's response came back 12 hours later. Approved. Authorization given for the Widowmaker test. Sarah felt a chill. The Widowmaker. The stellar detonation device. They were actually going to use it. The target was the Korth military system of Varnax. It had a large star that was already unstable. The Widowmaker would just push it over the edge. 3 Korth military worlds orbited that star. Total population, 200 million, mostly soldiers and their families. Sarah's science officer looked pale as he prepared the device. Admiral, once we deploy this, there's no going back. The star will go supernova. Everything in this system will be destroyed. I know, Sarah said. Deploy it. The device was fired into the star. Deep in the stellar core, the device activated, disrupting the fusion reactions that kept the star stable. The process would take 3 hours. Sarah broadcast a message to the Korth worlds. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. In 3 hours, your star will explode. You have that long to evacuate. This is more warning than you gave New Eden. The Korth worlds panicked. Ships launched desperately, trying to get as many people as possible to safety. But 3 hours wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Sarah watched from a safe distance as the star died. First it brightened, then it swelled. Then it exploded in a blast of light and radiation that would have been visible from 100 light-years away. The 3 worlds were vaporized instantly. The few ships that had escaped were caught in the radiation blast. Sarah's sensors showed no survivors. 200 million Korth dead in a single moment. Marcus was on the bridge. Good, he said. Now they know how it feels. But Sarah noticed he was shaking. And in the reflection on the view screen, she saw her own face. She looked older, harder, like something inside her had died along with those 200 million people. Broadcast this to all Korth systems, Sarah ordered. Video of the supernova. And include a message. This is Retribution. This is justice. This is what happens when you massacre our children. Surrender now or face extinction. The message went out across Korth space. The response came 3 days later. Not from the Korth government, but from individual ship captains, colony administrators, civilian leaders, all saying the same thing: please stop. We had nothing to do with the attack. We didn't want this war, please. Sarah deleted the messages without reading most of them. Next target, she said. The Korth industrial worlds. We hit their ability to make weapons. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had been assigned to Sarah's fleet as a xenobiological advisor. She had survived New Eden, barely, and Earth wanted her expertise for the war, but she was troubled by what she saw. She approached Sarah in the Admiral's ready room. Admiral, I need to talk to you about the Korth. If this is about showing mercy, Sarah began. It's about understanding them, Amara interrupted. I've been studying their communications, their culture. Sarah, I don't think their entire government authorized the New Eden attack. I think it was a military faction acting on their own. So what? Sarah said. They're all guilty. They all allowed it to happen. Are we all guilty for what we're doing now? Amara asked quietly. We just killed 200 million people. Most of them were families, children, people who had nothing to do with New Eden. Sarah stood up, her voice harsh. They started this. We're finishing it. By becoming just like them? Amara asked. Sarah, listen to yourself. You sound like someone whose daughter watched people burn alive, Sarah said. Like someone who had to bury thousands of children in mass graves. Yes, Amara, I sound exactly like that, because that's what I am. Amara left, troubled. But Sarah pushed the conversation from her mind. There was work to do. Over the next 3 months, humanity's fleet pushed deeper into Korth space. 12 more worlds were occupied. Their weapons factories were destroyed. Their military academies were bombed from orbit. Anywhere the Korth could train soldiers or build ships was eliminated. The Reapers became legendary. Stories spread through both human and Korth ranks. Marcus Torres, the man who never stopped, who killed Korth commanders in their sleep, who left messages written in Korth blood. New Eden remembers. But there were costs. The Korth, desperate now, fought back with everything they had. They used suicide tactics, kamikaze runs, biological weapons of their own. They killed captured human soldiers in brutal ways and broadcast the videos, trying to provoke humanity into mistakes. It didn't work. Humanity had gone past anger into cold calculation. Every Korth atrocity was answered with methodical destruction. Every war crime was added to the list of grievances that would be paid in blood. Sarah barely slept anymore. When she did, she dreamed of fire. Sometimes it was New Eden burning. Sometimes it was Korth worlds. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. 18 months after the war began, humanity's fleet finally reached their ultimate target, Korth Prime, the Korth homeworld. 4 billion people lived there, including the government that had allowed New Eden to happen. Sarah looked at the planet on her view screen. It was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked almost like Earth. All ships, she transmitted, surround the planet. Full blockade. Nothing gets in or out. 2,000 warships took position around Korth Prime, their weapons pointed down at the helpless world. Earth Command sent the final order. You are authorized to proceed with total planetary bombardment. Leave no survivors. Sarah's finger hovered over the command. 4 billion people, the largest single act of killing in human history. Genocide on a scale that made the Korth's massacre of New Eden look small. Was this justice? Or was Amara right? Had they become exactly what they were fighting against? Behind her, Marcus stood in his Reaper armor. Do it, Admiral. End them. Sarah thought of Maya, of the mass graves, of the children who died screaming. She pressed the button, and the bombardment began. The bombardment of Korth Prime lasted 3 hours before Sarah Chen held up her hand. Cease fire, she ordered. The weapons stopped. Smoke rose from a dozen impact sites on the planet below. Cities were burning, but the planet itself was still intact. Still alive, Admiral? Her tactical officer asked, confused. Earth Command ordered total bombardment. I heard the order, Sarah said. But I need information first. Dr. Okonkwo, you said you had evidence the Korth government might not have authorized the New Eden attack. Show me. Amara rushed to the bridge carrying a datapad. Her hands shook as she pulled up files. I've been intercepting Korth communications for months. Look at this. 3 days before the New Eden attack, the Korth High Council was in emergency session. They were debating how to respond to human expansion near their borders. She showed Sarah the translated transcripts. The Korth leaders were divided. Some wanted to meet with human diplomats. Others wanted a military response. The vote was scheduled for the day after New Eden was attacked. Executor Valrex, the military commander who ordered the attack, Amara continued, he acted without government approval. He thought humanity was preparing to invade based on our weapons testing near the border. He decided to strike first. Sarah stared at the documents. Why didn't you show me this before? I tried, Amara said. You wouldn't listen. You were too angry. We all were. Marcus stepped forward, his helmet off. His face was scarred now from 18 months of combat. Even if this is true, Admiral, they still killed our people. Someone has to pay. Someone is paying, Sarah said quietly. We've killed millions already. How many more before it's enough? She opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Admiral Chen. I'm requesting a hold on the bombardment order. I have new intelligence that needs to be reviewed. The response came back 20 minutes later. Admiral Walker's face appeared on the screen and he was angry. Sarah, what the hell are you doing? We gave you an order. The Korth government didn't authorize New Eden, Sarah said. A rogue military commander did. If we destroy this planet, we're committing genocide against people who are innocent. Nobody's innocent, Walker snapped. They're Korth, that's enough, is it? Sarah asked. James, listen to yourself. We're talking about killing 4 billion people. Children, families, people who had nothing to do with what happened to us. They allowed it to happen, Walker said. Their military, their commander. Their responsibility. Then we're responsible for everything we've done, Sarah said. The 200 million we killed at Varnax. The 12 worlds we've occupied. The Reaper's missions. All of it. Walker's face hardened. You're relieved of command, Admiral Chen. Admiral Harrison will take over the fleet and complete the bombardment. The screen went dark. Sarah stood there, stunned. 18 months of war. 18 months of fighting for revenge. And now she was being removed because she wanted to stop. But then her communications officer spoke up. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Korth Prime. It's from their government. They want to talk. Put them through, Sarah said. A Korth appeared on the screen. She was old, her scaled skin marked with age patterns. She wore robes that marked her as a high-ranking official. I am Council Leader Theron, she said in translated speech. Please, Admiral Chen, we surrender, completely, unconditionally. We will face justice for New Eden. The military commanders responsible will be executed by our own people. Just please stop the killing. I want to believe you, Sarah said. But how do I know you're not just buying time to strike back? We have nothing left to strike with, Theron said sadly. You have destroyed our military. Our fleets are scattered. Our weapons factories are ash. We cannot fight you anymore. We could never fight you. You are terrifying in your anger. Sarah saw the fear in the alien's eyes. Real, genuine fear. The Korth were not warriors anymore. They were victims begging for mercy. I will consider your surrender, Sarah said. But I need time. She cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. I need to go to the planet's surface. I need to see what we've done. Marcus grabbed her arm. Admiral, that's suicide. The Korth could capture you. Let them try, Sarah said. I'm not going to order 4 billion people killed without seeing them first. She took a shuttle down to Korth Prime, escorted by 2 Reaper squads including Marcus. They landed in one of the bombed cities. The destruction was total. Buildings had collapsed. Fires burned everywhere. Bodies lay in the streets. Korth survivors watched them from the ruins. They didn't attack. They just stared with huge, frightened eyes. A Korth child approached slowly. She was maybe 5 years old in human terms, wearing torn clothes and covered in dust. She held out a small toy, some kind of stuffed animal. Sarah knelt down. The child said something in her language. Sarah's translator worked. Please don't hurt my family. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. This child looked at her with the same fear that Maya had shown during the New Eden attack. The same terror. The same desperate hope that maybe somehow the monsters would show mercy. I won't, Sarah whispered. She stood up and looked around at the devastation. Marcus, this was us. We did this. They did it first, Marcus said, but his voice was uncertain. Does that make it right? Sarah asked. Look at these people. They're terrified. They're defeated. They're not soldiers or politicians. They're just people trying to survive, like we were on New Eden. One of the Reapers removed his helmet. It was a young man, barely 20. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. I've been having nightmares, he said quietly. About the things we've done. The Korth we killed who were trying to surrender. The colonies we burned. I joined the military to protect people. But I don't feel like a protector anymore. I feel like a murderer. Other Reapers nodded. Even Marcus looked troubled. We all feel it, Sarah said. We're carrying the weight of millions of deaths. And for what? To make ourselves feel better about New Eden? Does it work? Do any of you feel better? Marcus shook his head slowly. No, I still see my boys' faces every night. Killing Korth doesn't bring them back. It just adds more ghosts. Sarah looked up at the sky where her fleet waited. Then maybe it's time to stop creating ghosts. She returned to the Retribution to find chaos. Admiral Harrison had arrived with orders to take command and complete the bombardment. But half the fleet was refusing to obey. Ship captains were sending messages saying they wouldn't participate in genocide. Crew members were threatening to mutiny. The fleet was tearing itself apart. Sarah walked onto the bridge to find Harrison arguing with her officers. I have direct orders from Earth Command, Harrison shouted. Anyone who disobeys will be court-martialed for treason. Then court-martial us all, Sarah's tactical officer said. We won't kill 4 billion defenseless people. Harrison saw Sarah. You did this. You made them soft. I made them human, Sarah replied. We came here for justice, not genocide. Justice is genocide, Harrison said. After what they did to New Eden, they all deserve to die. Even the children? Sarah asked. Even the ones who weren't born yet when New Eden happened. Even the ones who protested against the war? Harrison hesitated. For just a moment, doubt crossed his face. Sarah pressed on. Admiral, I've been to the surface. I've seen what we've done. We've become the monsters we were fighting. If we kill 4 billion people now, we're no different than the Korth who killed our people on New Eden. The difference is they started it, Harrison said. And we'll finish it, Sarah agreed. But not like this. Not by becoming mass murderers. The bridge was silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen. Finally, Harrison sat down heavily in the command chair. What do you suggest? We accept their surrender, Sarah said. We put the commanders who authorized New Eden on trial. We make them pay for what they did. But we don't kill innocents. That's not justice. That's just revenge. Harrison looked at the planet on the view screen. Earth Command won't like this. Earth Command isn't here, Sarah said. We are, and we have to live with what we do. I don't know about you, but I can't live with 4 billion more deaths on my conscience. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. We do it your way, but you explain it to Earth. Sarah opened a channel to Earth Command. When Walker's face appeared, he was furious. Chen, what is the meaning of this? Harrison was supposed to complete the bombardment. The bombardment is not going to happen, Sarah said firmly. The Korth have surrendered unconditionally. We have won the war. Continuing to kill them would not be victory. It would be murder. You're disobeying direct orders, Walker said. That's treason. Then charge me with treason, Sarah said. Court-martial me. Execute me if you want, but I will not participate in genocide, and neither will most of this fleet. If you want that planet destroyed, you'll have to come out here and do it yourself. She could see Walker struggling with rage, but behind him, she saw other officers nodding. Earth Command was not united on this either. This isn't over, Chen, Walker said and cut the transmission. Sarah turned to her crew. Send a message to Korth Prime. We accept their surrender. But there are conditions. The commanders responsible for New Eden will be turned over for trial. The Korth military will be disbanded. All weapons of mass destruction will be destroyed. And they will pay reparations to the families of the victims. The Korth government agreed to everything. Within a week, Executor Valrex and 15 other military commanders were in human custody. The Korth fleets were being scrapped. The weapons factories that survived were being converted to peaceful production. But the galaxy was watching. Other alien species had seen what humanity did in its rage. The Galactic Concord, an alliance of peaceful species, held an emergency meeting. Their message to humanity was blunt. You are declared a rogue species. Your aggressive expansion and genocidal warfare make you a threat to galactic peace. If you continue this path, we will take action against you. Earth's government was shocked. They had expected sympathy for the victims of New Eden. Instead, they were being threatened. Sarah understood why. She had been there. She had seen what humanity had become. They had killed millions in their rage. They had used weapons that other species had banned as too horrible. They had shown the galaxy that humans, when pushed, would burn everything to ashes. Marcus came to her quarters one night. He looked exhausted. Admiral, can I talk to you? Of course. He sat down, his hands shaking. I can't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. The Korth I killed. Some were soldiers. But some, Admiral, some were just civilians who got in the way. And I killed them all the same. We all have blood on our hands, Sarah said quietly. The question is what we do now. I don't know if I can live with what I've done, Marcus said. My family died on New Eden. I wanted revenge so badly. But revenge didn't bring them back. It just made me into something they would have hated. Sarah had no easy answers. We can't change the past. We can only try to be better going forward. How? Marcus asked. How do we come back from this? One day at a time, Sarah said. We make sure it never happens again. We make sure the people who died on both sides are remembered, and we try to build something better from the ashes. Dr. Okonkwo joined them. She had been working with Korth scientists, trying to understand what had gone wrong. I have findings, she said. The Korth who ordered the New Eden attack did it because they were scared. They saw humanity's aggressive expansion and military buildup. They saw our weapons testing near their borders. And they panicked. They thought we were going to invade them. Were they wrong? Sarah asked. Amara hesitated. No, not entirely. We were expanding very aggressively. And we were testing weapons near their territory. From their perspective, it looked like preparation for war. So New Eden happened because of a misunderstanding? Marcus asked bitterly. New Eden happened because nobody talked, Amara said. Because both sides were too proud and too scared to communicate. Because we assumed the worst about each other. Sarah thought about that. 8.7 million people dead on New Eden because of fear and pride. Millions more dead in the war that followed for the same reasons. Then we need to make sure it doesn't happen again, Sarah said. With anyone. We need to learn to talk before we shoot. But talking was hard. On Earth, the debate raged. Half the population wanted to continue the war until every Korth was dead. They called Sarah a traitor. They said she had betrayed the victims of New Eden. The other half supported her. They said humanity had already gone too far. They said the war had made humans into monsters. The Unified Congress was deadlocked. They couldn't agree on whether to accept the Korth surrender or continue the war. They scheduled a final vote for 1 month later. In that month, Sarah did something she should have done earlier. She went back to New Eden. The colony was being rebuilt slowly. Maya was there, working with other survivors to create a memorial for the dead. When she saw her mother, she ran and hugged her. Mom, I heard what you did. I heard you stopped the bombardment. A lot of people are angry about that, Sarah said. Let them be angry, Maya said. Mom, after you left, I had a lot of time to think. About the attack. About what happened. And you know what I realized? Killing more people won't bring our friends back. It won't heal the hurt. It'll just create more pain. She led Sarah to the memorial. It was a simple stone structure, with names carved into every surface. 8.7 million names. Every person who died in the New Eden massacre. This is what matters, Maya said. Remembering them, honoring them, making sure nobody else has to see their world burn. That's real justice, Mom, not revenge. Sarah touched the names carved in stone. People she had known, neighbors, friends, children who used to play in the streets. What if the vote goes the other way? Sarah asked. What if Earth decides to finish the war? Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, then you'll have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Someone who follows orders that are wrong, or someone who stands up for what's right, even if it costs everything. Sarah knew her daughter was right. The vote would come soon, and she would have to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. But first she had one more thing to do. She had to visit Korth Prime again. This time not as a conqueror, as a witness to what humanity had done. She took a shuttle to the surface and walked through the cities they had bombed. Korth worked to rebuild their homes. Children played in the ruins trying to find joy in the devastation. An old Korth approached her. It was Council Leader Theron. Admiral Chen, thank you for coming. I needed to see this, Sarah said, to understand what we did. Theron led her through the city to a hospital. We want to show you something. Inside the hospital, Korth doctors were treating wounded. Human and Korth working together, saving lives. These human doctors volunteered, Theron explained. After the ceasefire, they said they wanted to help heal instead of hurt, and our doctors welcomed them. Sarah saw a human doctor setting a Korth child's broken arm. The child was scared, but the doctor was gentle and patient. When he finished, the child smiled. This is what your species can be, Theron said. Not the ones who bombed our cities, but the ones who heal, the ones who help, the ones who choose mercy over revenge. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. I don't know if Earth will let us be that. Then you must fight for it, Theron said. The same way you fought us. With everything you have. Because the galaxy is watching, Admiral, and they need to see that humanity can be more than destroyers. Sarah returned to her ship knowing what she had to do. When the vote came, she would speak. She would tell Earth the truth about what they had become and what they could be instead. The question was, would anyone listen? The vote was scheduled for noon Geneva time. Sarah Chen stood before the Unified Congress, knowing that billions of people across human space were watching. The chamber was packed with delegates from every colony, every nation, every settlement that had survived the war. Members of Congress, Sarah began. 18 months ago, the Korth Ascendancy massacred 8.7 million of our people. I lost friends in that attack. My daughter barely survived. Many of you lost family too. That pain is real. That anger is justified. She paused, looking at the faces in the chamber. Some were sympathetic. Many were not. In response to that attack, we built the largest war machine in human history. We destroyed their fleets. We burned their worlds. We killed millions of Korth in revenge. And when we finally had the chance to kill billions more to wipe them out completely, I stopped it. Angry shouts erupted. "Traitor!" someone yelled. "They killed our children!" Sarah raised her hand for quiet. "Yes, they killed our children. And we killed theirs. Does that make us even? Does more death heal the wounds? I've walked through the ruins on both New Eden and Korth Prime. I've seen what we're capable of when we let rage control us. And I'm here to tell you, if we continue down this path, we won't be the victims anymore. We'll be the monsters." Admiral Walker stood up. He had flown in from Earth specifically for this vote. Admiral Chen speaks of monsters. But she forgets what the Korth did. They came to our peaceful colonies and murdered everyone. Men, women, pregnant mothers, babies in their cribs. They showed no mercy. Why should we? Because showing mercy is what makes us human, Sarah replied. Because if we become exactly like them, then what did all those people on New Eden die for? Did they die so we could become genocidal killers? Or did they die hoping humanity would be better? A delegate from Mars stood. "Admiral Chen, you say we killed millions. But they started this war. Every Korth death is on their hands, not ours." "Is it?" Sarah asked. "Let me tell you about something I learned. The Korth commander who ordered the New Eden attack, Executor Valrex, he acted without full government approval. He was scared. He saw our military buildup near Korth borders. He saw our weapons testing, and he panicked. He struck first because he thought we were going to invade." The chamber erupted in noise. Sarah continued over the shouting. "Was he right to attack New Eden? Absolutely not. It was murder. It was genocide. And he will face justice for it." But his fear wasn't completely unfounded. We were expanding aggressively. We were testing devastating weapons near their territory. From their perspective, we looked like a threat. "So you're saying New Eden was our fault?" someone shouted. "No," Sarah said firmly. "New Eden was the fault of people who chose violence over communication. On both sides. We assumed the Korth were hostile. They assumed we were invaders. Nobody tried to talk, and 8.7 million people died because of it." Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. She had been invited to present her findings. "Members of Congress, I've spent months studying Korth communications and culture. I've spoken with their scientists, their historians, their ordinary citizens. And I've learned something important. The Korth are not a warrior species by nature. They're actually quite peaceful. But they've been attacked by aggressive neighbors before. They lost billions in a war 300 years ago. That trauma shaped their military policy. When they saw humanity expanding toward their borders, they saw their old enemies returning." "More excuses," Walker said. "Next, you'll tell us they had good reasons to kill our children." "There are no good reasons for what happened to New Eden," Amara said. "But there are reasons we need to understand if we want to prevent it from happening again. Not just with the Korth, but with anyone." A delegate from the Jupiter colonies spoke up. "I lost my brother on New Eden. He was a teacher. He died protecting his students. And you're asking me to show mercy to the species that killed him?" Sarah looked at the woman. "I'm asking you to honor his memory by being better than his killers. I'm asking you to make sure no other teacher has to die protecting their students. And the only way to do that is to stop the cycle of revenge." Marcus Torres entered the chamber. He was still wearing his Reaper armor, but he had removed his helmet. His face was scarred and tired. Every eye turned to him. "I'm Captain Marcus Torres," he said. "My wife and 2 sons died in the northern settlements on New Eden. For 18 months I've led the Reapers. We killed thousands of Korth. We hit their bases. We destroyed their command centers. We made them pay in blood for what they did to my family." He paused, his voice breaking. "And it didn't help. My boys are still gone. My wife is still dead. Killing Korth didn't bring them back. It didn't make the pain go away. It just gave me nightmares about the people I killed." Walker stood. "Captain Torres is suffering from combat fatigue. He doesn't know what he's saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," Marcus said. "Admiral Walker, you want to continue this war? Fine, but you go fight it. You look into the eyes of Korth children and pull the trigger. You watch cities burn and smell the bodies cooking. You do it. Because I can't anymore. I won't. Other soldiers in the chamber stood up. Some removed their military insignia and placed them on their seats. A silent protest. You're all traitors, Walker said. We're all tired, Marcus replied. Tired of killing. Tired of dying. Tired of becoming something our families wouldn't recognize. My boys were good kids. They believed in helping people, not hurting them. If they could see what I've become, what I've done in their names, they'd be ashamed of me. Sarah saw tears on Marcus's face. The question before this Congress isn't whether the Korth should pay for New Eden. They should. They will. The question is how much more of our own humanity are we willing to sacrifice for revenge? The chamber was quiet now. People were thinking, considering. Sarah pressed her advantage. I propose we accept the Korth surrender on the following terms. The commanders responsible for New Eden will be tried for war crimes and executed if found guilty. The Korth military will be disbanded and rebuilt under international supervision. All Korth weapons of mass destruction will be destroyed. They will pay reparations to the victims' families, and both species will establish a permanent peace commission to prevent future misunderstandings. And if they violate these terms? A delegate asked. Then we have the military power to respond, Sarah said. But this time we respond with precision, not genocide. We target those responsible, not entire populations. Walker shook his head. This is weakness. The other species in the galaxy will see this as humanity being soft. Let them, Sarah said. I'd rather be seen as soft than as mass murderers. The Galactic Concord has already declared us a rogue species. They're threatening intervention. If we complete the genocide of the Korth, we'll prove them right. We'll make enemies of every peaceful species in the galaxy. Is that what we want? The debate continued for hours. Delegates argued passionately on both sides. Some wanted total Korth extinction. Others wanted immediate peace. Most were somewhere in the middle, unsure what the right answer was. Finally, the vote was called. Sarah watched the board as votes came in. It was close. Incredibly close. The chamber held its breath as the final tallies were calculated. The result flashed on the screen. 301 in favor of accepting the surrender. 298 against. 3 abstentions. Humanity had chosen peace. Barely. Walker stormed out of the chamber. Many others followed him, angry and disappointed. But the majority had spoken. The war was over. Sarah felt exhausted. She had won, but it didn't feel like victory. Too much had been lost. Too much damage had been done. But then Maya appeared in the chamber. She had been watching from the public gallery. She ran to her mother and hugged her tight. You did it, Mom. You stopped it. We barely won, Sarah said. And a lot of people are very angry. Let them be angry, Maya said. You saved 4 billion lives today. That's what matters. The next weeks were busy. The surrender terms had to be formalized. War crimes trials had to be organized. The fleet had to be partially demobilized. And humanity had to figure out how to live with what they had done. Executor Valrex and the other Korth commanders responsible for New Eden were brought to trial. It was broadcast across both human and Korth space. Sarah was called to testify. She stood in the courtroom and looked at Valrex. He was old for a Korth, his scales dull and cracked. He looked tired. Executor Valrex, the judge said, you are charged with genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sentient life. How do you plead? Guilty, Valrex said simply. I ordered the attack on New Eden. I knew civilians would die. I did it anyway because I believed humanity was preparing to invade us. I was wrong, and I must pay for that mistake. Sarah listened as Valrex explained his reasoning. He had seen human warships near Korth borders. He had intercepted communications about weapons testing. He had read intelligence reports suggesting human expansion would soon reach Korth core worlds, and he had acted to stop what he saw as an inevitable invasion. Did you consider diplomacy? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Valrex said, but I did not believe humans would negotiate in good faith. Your species has a reputation for aggressive expansion. Every species you encounter either submits or is destroyed. I thought Korth would be next. So you decided to strike first. Yes, and I was wrong. The attack on New Eden did not stop humanity. It enraged you. It turned a potential diplomatic situation into a war that cost millions of lives on both sides. My attempt to protect my people led to their near extinction. Sarah was called to the stand. Admiral Chen, what should be done with Executor Valrex? Sarah looked at the Korth commander. He should be executed. He committed genocide. There's no redemption for that, but I want it understood that he's not the only one responsible for this war. We all bear some blame. The Korth for striking without attempting diplomacy. Humanity for expanding so aggressively that we seemed like invaders. The galaxy for not establishing better communication channels between species. We're all guilty of creating the conditions that led to New Eden. The trial lasted 2 weeks. In the end, Valrex and 14 other Korth military commanders were sentenced to death. They were executed by lethal injection, their bodies cremated, and ashes scattered in space. But there were also human trials. Officers who had committed atrocities during the war, soldiers who had executed Korth prisoners, commanders who had ordered bombardment of purely civilian targets after the ceasefire was announced. 37 humans were convicted of war crimes. Admiral Walker was among them. He had tried to continue the bombardment of Korth Prime against orders. He was stripped of his rank and sentenced to 20 years in prison. At his sentencing, Walker looked at Sarah. You think you've won. You think you've saved humanity's soul. But you've made us weak. The next time aliens attack us, we won't have the strength to respond. If there's a next time, Sarah replied, maybe we'll be wise enough to prevent it instead of responding with genocide. The memorial treaties were signed 6 months after the war ended. On New Eden, a massive monument was erected listing every name of those who died. Korth representatives came to the unveiling. They wept alongside humans, mourning the dead together. On Korth Prime, a similar monument listed the Korth dead. Millions of names. Human representatives attended that ceremony too. Sarah stood before the monument and read some of the names. Civilians, children, people who had nothing to do with New Eden but paid the price anyway. I'm sorry, she whispered to the stone. I'm sorry we did this to you. Council Leader Theron stood beside her. We are both sorry, both guilty, both responsible for too many deaths. The question is whether we can build something better from these ashes. I hope so, Sarah said. I don't know if I can live with myself if we can't. Maya had stayed on New Eden, working with the rebuilding efforts. She sent her mother regular messages. The colony was slowly coming back to life. New settlers were arriving. Buildings were being rebuilt. The wheat fields were growing again. But there were changes too. The new settlements were designed with better defenses. Communication arrays had redundant backups. And most importantly, there was now a permanent diplomatic corps training center on New Eden. Young humans learning to talk to aliens, to understand them, to prevent misunderstandings before they became massacres. Marcus Torres took a teaching position there. He trained the new generation of Marines, but his lessons were different now. He taught them when to fight, but also when not to. When to show mercy. When to choose peace over violence. The Reapers became legends, he told his students, but legends aren't always heroes. Sometimes they're just killers who couldn't stop. Don't be like we were. Be better. Dr. Okonkwo led the Interspecies Reconciliation Commission. It was a new organization dedicated to studying alien cultures and preventing conflicts. Scientists and diplomats from multiple species worked together, sharing knowledge and building understanding. She invited both human and Korth researchers to join. They worked in the same labs, ate in the same cafeterias, slowly learned to see each other as colleagues instead of enemies. It wasn't easy. There was anger on both sides, grief, mistrust. Some humans refused to work with Korth. Some Korth refused to work with humans. But slowly, connections formed, friendships developed, understanding grew. The Galactic Concord watched all of this carefully. They had threatened intervention if humanity continued its genocidal path. Now they saw humans trying to make amends. It wasn't enough to erase what had been done, but it was a start. The Concord sent a delegation to Earth. Their message was clear. You are still considered dangerous, but you have shown the capacity for mercy and growth. We will give you a chance. Do not waste it. Sarah retired from the military. She couldn't serve anymore, not after everything she had done. She took a position as a civilian advisor on the Reconciliation Commission, Using her experience to help prevent future conflicts, she also started writing a book about the war, about what humanity had done and what they had learned, about the cost of revenge and the value of mercy. It became required reading in military academies and diplomatic schools. One chapter was titled, "The Moment I Almost Destroyed 4 Billion Lives." In it, she described standing on the bridge of the Retribution, her finger on the button that would begin the final bombardment of Korth Prime. She described the rage she felt, the grief, the desire to make someone pay for New Eden. And she described the Korth child who had approached her on the planet's surface, asking her not to hurt her family. "In that moment," Sarah wrote, "I saw the truth. That child looked at me with the same fear my daughter had shown during the New Eden attack, the same terror, the same desperate hope. And I realized that if I killed her and her family, I wouldn't be avenging New Eden. I would just be repeating it. I would become the monster that had haunted my nightmares." The book was controversial. Many humans called her a traitor for showing any sympathy to the Korth, but many others thanked her for her honesty, for showing that even in humanity's darkest moment, they had found a way to choose mercy over massacre. Years passed. The wounds healed slowly. Trade began between human and Korth worlds. Cultural exchanges happened. Young people who had not lived through the war grew up seeing the other species as neighbors instead of enemies. But the scars remained. On New Eden, the mass graves were carefully maintained. On Korth Prime, the bombed cities were partially preserved as reminders. Both species insisted on remembering what had happened, ensuring future generations would know the cost of violence. Sarah visited New Eden one last time before she died. She was old now, her hair white, her body failing. Maya took her to the memorial. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked. "Stopping the bombardment? A lot of people still hate you for it." Sarah looked at the names carved in stone. "No, I regret everything that led to this moment. I regret that we expanded so aggressively. I regret that we didn't try harder to communicate with the Korth. I regret every death in the war. But stopping the genocide? That's the one thing I'm proud of. That's the one choice I know was right." "The Korth children who lived because of your choice," Maya said. "They're adults now. Some of them have children of their own. You saved so many futures, Mom." Sarah nodded slowly. "But I couldn't save the past. All these names, all these people, they're gone forever because we couldn't find a better way." "We found one now," Maya said. "That's something." "It's not enough," Sarah said. "It'll never be enough. But it's all we have." She died 2 weeks later, peacefully in her sleep. At her funeral, both humans and Korth attended. They stood together and mourned the woman who had been both destroyer and savior, who had led the war machine and then stopped it. Her legacy was complicated. Some called her a hero, some called her a traitor. Most recognized that she was simply human, with all the flaws and virtues that implied. The galaxy continued turning. The war between humanity and the Korth ascendancy became history, a cautionary tale told to young diplomats and soldiers. A reminder of what could happen when fear and pride replaced communication and understanding. And on both New Eden and Korth Prime, the monuments stood. Silent witnesses to the dead, reminders of the cost, promises that it would never happen again. At least that was the hope. 50 years after the war ended, the anniversary of New Eden's destruction arrived once again. The colony had been rebuilt, but it looked different now. The architecture was a blend of human and Korth styles. Gardens grew where mass graves once were, and the great memorial stood in the center of the main settlement, visible from everywhere. Dr. Sarah Chen, named after her grandmother, stood before the memorial preparing for the ceremony. She was a teacher at the Diplomatic Academy, training the next generation of peacekeepers. She had never known her grandmother personally, but she had grown up with her legacy. People began arriving as the sun rose. Humans and Korth together, old veterans who had fought in the war, their bodies bent with age. Middle-aged people who had been children during the attack, carrying their own children now. Young people who knew the war only from history books. Among them was a Korth named Varen. He was in his 50s, which meant he had been just a child when the war ended. His mother had been one of the civilians evacuated from Korth Prime before Admiral Chen stopped the bombardment. "Dr. Chen," Varen said, approaching. "Thank you for organizing this ceremony." "Thank you for coming," Sarah replied. "I know it's not easy for Korth to return to New Eden. It's necessary," Varen said. "We must remember. Both species must remember." More people gathered. Sarah recognized some of them from her studies. There was Marcus Torres Jr., son of the famous Reaper captain. His father had died 10 years ago, but Marcus Jr. carried on his work, teaching conflict resolution at the academy. There was Theron's granddaughter, Kesix, who served on the Interspecies Reconciliation Commission. She had dedicated her life to preventing future wars. There was Admiral Harrison's daughter, who had publicly denounced her father's actions and worked to reform military training programs. All of them here to remember, to honor the dead, to promise it would never happen again. The ceremony began at exactly the time the first bombs had fallen 50 years ago. Sarah stepped to the podium. 50 years ago today, she said, 8.7 million people died here, murdered in an attack that should never have happened. Today we remember them. We speak their names. We honor their lives. She began reading names. It took 6 hours to read all 8.7 million. Other speakers joined her, taking turns. Human names. The people who had built New Eden, who had farmed its fields, who had raised their children here, who had dreamed of a future that was stolen from them. When the names were finally read, Kesix stepped forward to speak for the Korth. "We also remember," she said, in accented but clear human language. "We remember the millions of Korth who died in the war that followed. We remember them not to diminish the tragedy of New Eden, but to acknowledge that violence creates more violence, that revenge creates more need for revenge, that death creates only more death." She placed a wreath at the memorial. It was made of flowers from both Earth and the Korth homeworld, genetically merged by scientists from both species into something new and beautiful. "This flower exists because our scientists work together," Kesix said. "It is stronger than either parent species alone. It represents what we can create when we choose cooperation over conflict." Building over burning. Maya Torres, daughter of the late admiral, stepped forward. She was 70 years old now, her hair silver, but her eyes were still sharp and clear. "My mother stopped the war," Maya said. "She made the hardest choice of her life. Many humans hated her for it, called her a traitor, said she betrayed the victims of New Eden. But she knew something important. She knew that killing more people wouldn't bring our loved ones back, that genocide wouldn't heal our grief, that becoming monsters wouldn't honor the memory of those who died." She looked out at the crowd. "My mother wasn't perfect. She led the fleet that destroyed Korth worlds. She ordered attacks that killed millions. She carried that guilt until the day she died. But when it mattered most, when she had the power to end an entire species, she chose mercy. And because of that choice, there are Korth standing here today, living, breathing, contributing to our shared future." Varen stepped forward. "My mother was on Korth Prime when the bombardment began. She has told me many times about the terror of that day, the explosions, the fires, the certainty that we would all die. And then the bombardment stopped. Admiral Chen stopped it. Because of her, I am alive. My children are alive. My grandchildren, who were born just last year, are alive." He placed his hand over his heart in the human gesture of respect. "Admiral Sarah Chen was not our enemy. She was our savior, and we honor her memory as much as you do." The ceremony continued. Stories were shared, memories recounted. The old veterans, both human and Korth, stood together and spoke of the war, not with pride but with sadness, with regret, with the weight of experience that came from having killed and nearly been killed. Marcus Torres Jr. spoke about his father. "My dad became famous as a Reaper, as a warrior who brought retribution to the Korth, but in his later years he spoke only of regret. He would tell his students that violence is sometimes necessary, but should never be the first choice. That mercy is harder than revenge, but more important. That true strength is knowing when to stop fighting." A young Korth spoke about her grandmother, who had been killed in one of humanity's attacks on a Korth colony. "My grandmother was a teacher," she said. "She died in her classroom trying to protect her students. For years I hated humans for what they did to her. But then I learned about New Eden, about the human teachers who died the same way, and I realized that violence doesn't discriminate. It kills the good and the bad alike. It destroys teachers and students, parents and children, dreamers and builders. The sun began to set as the ceremony drew to a close. Sarah Chen looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of people, humans in Korth, old and young, all here to remember, all here to promise. We cannot change the past, Sarah said. We cannot bring back the dead. We cannot erase the pain and suffering of the war, but we can choose what we do with that memory. We can let it fuel more hatred and violence, or we can let it teach us, warn us, guide us toward a better path. She gestured to the memorial. These names are not just a list of the dead. They are a promise that we will never forget what hatred costs, that we will always seek understanding before conflict, that we will protect life instead of destroying it, that we will honor those who died by ensuring others don't have to. As darkness fell, lights began to appear around the memorial. 8.7 million small lights, one for each person who died. They glowed softly in the night like stars brought down to earth. Children ran among the lights, human and Korth together. They had never known the war. To them, the other species was not an enemy, but a neighbor, a classmate, a friend. An elderly Korth veteran sat on a bench watching the children play. A human veteran sat beside him. They didn't speak. They just watched the children and remembered when the galaxy had been on fire. Do you think it will last? The Korth asked finally. This peace? The human was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Probably not forever, but maybe long enough for these children to have children of their own. Maybe long enough for the scars to heal a bit more. That would be something, the Korth said. It would be everything, the human replied. Later that night, Sarah Chen walked through the rebuilt colony. The streets were peaceful. Cafes served food from both Earth and the Korth homeworld. Museums displayed art from both cultures. Schools taught both languages. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still prejudice, still people on both sides who couldn't let go of the past. But it was better. So much better than the alternative. She stopped at a small park where a statue stood. It was a sculpture of Admiral Sarah Chen, her hand outstretched in a gesture of peace. At the base was an inscription in both human and Korth languages. Never again, never forgotten, never without cost. A young human couple was sitting near the statue, teaching their daughter to read the inscription. The girl was maybe 5 years old, curious and bright-eyed. What does it mean, Mama? The girl asked. Her mother thought carefully about how to explain. It means that long ago people made terrible mistakes. They hurt each other very badly, but then they learned that hurting each other only made things worse, so they promised to never do it again, to never forget what happened, and to always remember that peace is not free. It costs effort and understanding and forgiveness. Did Great-Grandma Sarah help make the peace? The girl asked. Yes, she did, the father said. She was very brave. She stopped a great evil when others wanted to continue it. The girl looked at the statue thoughtfully. When I grow up, I want to be brave like her. Sarah watched this exchange from a distance, her eyes wet with tears. This was what her grandmother had fought for. Not victory, not revenge, but this moment. This child who could grow up in peace, who could see Korth as friends instead of enemies, who could dream of a future without war. The next day, Sarah taught her class at the Diplomatic Academy. The students were a mix of humans, Korth, and several other species. They were learning about the war, studying what had gone wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. The failure was not military, Sarah explained. Both sides had strong militaries. The failure was diplomatic, communication, understanding. The Korth saw human expansion as a threat but never tried to discuss it. Humans saw Korth territory as empty space to fill but never asked if anyone lived there. A human student raised his hand. But Professor, the Korth killed millions of our people. How can we ever trust them again? Before Sarah could answer, a Korth student responded. And humans killed millions of my people. How can we trust you? The answer is we don't trust blindly. We trust carefully. We verify, we communicate. We build relationships slowly. Trust is not given. It is earned over time through consistent actions. Exactly right, Sarah said. Trust after conflict is fragile. It must be protected, nurtured, given time to grow, and both sides must be willing to take risks, to be vulnerable, to admit when they're wrong. After class, several students stayed to talk with Sarah. They had questions about her grandmother, about what it had been like to stop the war, about how to be brave when everyone else wanted violence. Sarah shared what she knew. Stories her mother Maya had told her. Letters her grandmother had written. The doubts and fears Admiral Chen had felt. The nightmares she'd endured. The hatred she'd faced from her own people. She wasn't perfect, Sarah told them. She made mistakes. She did terrible things during the war. But when it mattered most, she chose compassion over cruelty, and that choice changed everything. Years continued to pass. The generation that had fought in the war died off, one by one. Marcus Torres Jr. passed away. Keesix retired. The last of the old veterans faded into history. But their lessons lived on. The diplomatic academy expanded, training thousands of peacekeepers and negotiators. The Interspecies Reconciliation Commission opened offices on dozens of worlds. Trade between species flourished. Joint scientific projects produced amazing discoveries. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still misunderstandings, still people who held on to old hatreds. But the galaxy had learned something from humanity's war with the Korth. Violence was easy, but peace was better. Revenge felt good in the moment, but compassion created lasting change. Other species began adopting human-Korth peace protocols. When the Zalarian Novan empires nearly went to war over a border dispute, mediators trained on New Eden helped them find a peaceful solution. When the Thurian Collective faced internal conflict, Korth negotiators helped broker a compromise. The war that had nearly destroyed two species became a foundation for galactic peace. On the 100th anniversary of New Eden's destruction, the ceremony was different. Instead of mourning, it was a celebration of survival, of growth, of change. The memorial still stood, the name still carved in stone, but now it was surrounded by gardens tended by both species, by schools where human and Korth children learned together, by homes where mixed families lived. The galaxy had not forgotten the horror of the war, but it had learned from it. And that made all the difference. Sarah Chen, now old herself and preparing to retire, stood before the memorial one last time. She thought about her grandmother, who she had never met but whose shadow had shaped her entire life. "Thank you," Sarah whispered to the stone, "for being brave enough to stop, for choosing peace over revenge, for showing us there's always another way." A young Korth child approached her holding a flower. "Are you great-great-grandma Sarah?" the child asked. "I'm her great-granddaughter," Sarah said, smiling. "My teacher says your grandma saved my great-great-grandma," the child said. "So we're connected." "Yes," Sarah said, taking the flower. "We're all connected now." The child ran off to play with human friends. Sarah watched them go, thinking about connection, about how two species that had tried to destroy each other had instead created something beautiful together. She thought about the cost, the millions dead on both sides, the trauma that had echoed through generations, the scars that would never fully heal. But she also thought about the alternative. What would have happened if her grandmother had not stopped the bombardment? If humanity had completed the genocide of the Korth, if revenge had consumed them entirely? The galaxy would be darker, colder, lonelier, and humanity would have lost something essential, something that made them more than just another violent species scratching for survival in an uncaring universe. They would have lost their humanity. By choosing mercy, Admiral Sarah Chen had saved more than 4 billion Korth lives. She had saved humanity's soul. That night, as stars appeared in New Eden's sky, people gathered in the central square. Human and Korth musicians performed together. Artists displayed works that blended both cultures. Chefs served food that combined flavors from both worlds. Children played games that mixed human and Korth rules. Teenagers flirted across species lines, fumbling with translation devices. Elders shared stories of the old days, warning the young to never take peace for granted. And in the center of it all, the memorial glowed with its 8.7 million lights. A reminder, a warning, a promise. Never again, never forgotten, never without cost. Sarah looked up at the stars and thought about the future, about the children growing up in peace, about the connections being built, about the bridges spanning the darkness between species. The price of fire had been terrible. Millions dead, worlds burned, souls scarred. But from those ashes, something new had grown. Something worth the pain of creation, hope, understanding, peace. Not perfect peace. Peace was never perfect. It required constant work, constant vigilance, constant choice to be better than your worst instincts. But it was possible. Humanity and the Korth had proven that. Even after the worst atrocities, even after genocide and revenge, even after becoming monsters, there was always a way back to being human. All it took was someone brave enough to choose it. Sarah smiled, thinking of her grandmother, thinking of the choice she had made 50 years ago. The hardest choice. The right choice. "Thank you, Grandma," Sarah whispered to the stars, "for showing us the way." Above New Eden, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Sarah made a wish, the same wish her grandmother had made so long ago. That peace would last. That understanding would grow. That future generations would be better than those who came before. That the price paid in fire would not be wasted. The star faded. The night continued. And on New Eden, humans and Korth lived together. Proof that even the worst enemies could become friends, if they chose to. If they were brave enough. If they remembered that mercy was stronger than revenge. The galaxy turned. Time moved forward. And the legacy of Admiral Sarah Chen lived on. Not in statues or monuments, but in every child who grew up without knowing war. In every friendship that crossed species lines. In every moment of peace that could have been violence but wasn't. That was true victory. Not defeating your enemies, but making them obsolete. Not destroying those who hurt you, but building something so beautiful that destruction became unthinkable. Humanity had consumed the cosmos with their retribution, but in the end, they had chosen to light it with mercy instead, and that light would burn forever, warming the cold darkness of space with the promise that there was always another way, always hope, always a chance to be better, always a choice to be more human than monster. The price of fire was high, but the reward of peace was worth it, every time, every world. Every life saved instead of taken. That was the real story, not of humanity's vengeance, but of their redemption. Not of how they could destroy, but of how they chose not to. That was truly fuck yeah.